Hello and welcome to the Quincy Access Television Studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Welcome to State View, a program that helps you to stay up to date with legislation on Beacon Hill. And joining me today from the Norfolk and Plymouth District, we have Senator John Keenan. John, welcome back.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you. Folks will know or may know that you serve Quincy, Abington, Braintree, Hanover, Holbrook, and Rockland. But I always say to folks, legislation passed on the state level really affects people that live throughout the Commonwealth.
Oh, it does. There are local bills that we work on that
Certainly
clearly have a local impact, but a lot of what we do is statewide policy. You look at our budget, which is one of the biggest things that we do every year. That impacts everybody in the Commonwealth, from Provincetown to Pittsfield and everywhere in between.
Let's look, before we kind of move forward, let's look back at the end of the legislature last year. And I know one of your key, I suppose, bills it was passed, was the Substance Use Disorder Bill.
Yeah, so that was a comprehensive bill. It brought a lot of different bills together, and there was the hope that we would pass it at the end of July, but when our formal sessions end. But it was one of those bills that, despite us going 24 straight hours at the end of the session, did not make its way through. And so over the course of several months after July 31st through the fall and into December, the work continued. And it ultimately passed, and I was thrilled that one of the things that we'd worked on now for a couple sessions was included in the bill, and that's recovery coaches. We have people in the Commonwealth who are in recovery and want to offer themselves and their experiences to help other people. But there's been no standardized training, no certification, and it's very difficult to compensate them because they're not eligible to have their services covered by insurance. And so this recovery coach bill that was included in the substance use bill sets up a training program, sets up a licensing framework, and allows providers to bill insurance companies for the services of recovery coaches. So it is now a way that somebody in recovery can find themselves with a job helping others. And we've found that recovery coaches are just invaluable. It's somewhat like the AA model where you have somebody as a sponsor. This is a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more detailed, but it works in the same way. People need to talk to somebody who's gone through it.
Absolutely.
And has come out on the other side and is doing well in recovery to help others.
Other key points in that bill?
There was a whole bunch of things. There was continued our efforts on harm reduction, particularly making sure that Narcan is available as widely as possible. We didn't...
And I'm going to stop you there because there's some connection to that being made available at train stations.
Yes, so in the budget, we were able to file an amendment to get funding for the MBTA to put Narcan in a pilot program in 5 stations. They would provide Narcan outside the turnstiles and then inside the turnstiles as well. So that process is ongoing. The T is implementing that. We're trying to get them to move a little more quickly, but they've got a lot on their plate. And we're trying to do as much data collection as possible. Just anecdotally, one of the days last week, I was taking a train home and I was on the platform and I looked down and there were 2 used needles on the train tracks, on the gravel on the train tracks. So it indicates that people are injecting in train stations. And if there's an overdose situation, you can save a life if Narcan is there. And then once that life is saved, hopefully there's the opportunity for that person to then get treatment and go into recovery.
I stopped you there, but we were hitting some of the other key points of this.
Yeah, those are kind of the big ones. Access to treatment remains something that was a focus of the bill, making sure that people have as much access as possible. We were able to get in the bill also to do more work on the use of xylazine, which is a drug that's used by vets in some ways. Its consequences, it can cause rashes and some real serious skin problems. It's widely used, or becoming more widely used, among those who inject drugs. And so we want to get a better understanding of what's going on with that. Police officers and those first responders who go to an overdose scene are finding this more frequently. And then when people die and the toxicology tests are done, it's showing up more and more in the system. So there's a whole host of things. We're going to continue our work in the upcoming session with some bills were filed to even expand upon what's been done.
Staying with the kind of health vein, let's talk about non-opioid treatment.
So, for a long time, when you had pain, the default by a physician was to prescribe an opioid.
Absolutely.
And the physician did not need prior approval for that. They could write it and the insurance company would cover it. If the physician wanted to prescribe instead of an opioid some sort of alternative treatment, chiropractic care, physical therapy, acupuncture, whatever the physician thought might work best, the physician had to get prior authorization for that. The insurance company had to sign off, and there was a bit of a process to get insurance companies to do it. And so our view was, we know that opioids being prescribed contributed to the opioid epidemic, but they could do that by default without checking with insurance companies, without any sort of process. And so wouldn't alternatives be better if they were more easily accessible? And so we included language. We had a bill that passed that basically did away with prior authorization for alternative pain treatments. And that kind of continues on the practice that or the process that we've had. We were able to get, I think it was 3 years ago now, insurance companies to basically put 2 or 3 of these types of treatments on their offerings and making sure that they do not need prior authorization. This broadens that pretty extensively.
And I want to say, back in the day, my dad did have acupuncture. This is years ago, and it wasn't covered, so it was an out-of-pocket expense, but did treat the problem. I think it was a foot problem. Did treat the problem.
Different things work for different people. For some people, opioids work, and they find that they're not as addictive as they may be for somebody else who has the same condition, who takes the same amount of opioids. It could be a different reaction. There is news, and I don't...
Even on the addictive front?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
And just, I think within the last few days, I don't know if it was FDA approved, but there is a non-opioid pain medication that has, I think it was approved. It's going to be expensive, but it is a pain medication that's non-opioid that's supposedly just as effective.
So then how do you deal with that, right? Cost.
You know, it'll be up to the insurance companies in some way. You know, first, it'll take a while. It'll take a while, one, to see in real life, you know, beyond studies, how effective it is, how it works with people. Doctors will gain some experience with it. And then I think you'll see things kind of sort out in terms of what the cost will be, how widely available it will be, how much of it will be reimbursable, how much will be subject to a copay, all those types of things that happen when a new medication comes along.
Let's turn now, if we could, to mental health.
Yeah, so we find that at all age levels, there's been an increase in people with some mental health issues. And we have struggled as a Commonwealth to keep up in terms of providing treatment for that.
Do you think that these were conditions that just weren't recognized or diagnosed?
I believe so. Yes, I think there's a greater awareness of mental health now, and so people who might have struggled now feel more comfortable coming out and saying, hey, I'm struggling here. And I think that's actually what is happening. And I also think there may be an increased incidence of mental health, just given that we're living in some difficult, challenging times. And so we're looking at a couple of bills that we've filed this year to try to address some of the issues. For instance, oftentimes a mental health and a substance use issue is so closely related, and you don't see one until you've addressed the other. For instance, when people have a substance use issue and they go through detox, the experts will tell you that once they're detoxed, all the mental health problems that drove them to use substances come to the surface, and so you need treatment there as well. Right now, we have this funky system in the Commonwealth where if you are in a licensed mental health facility and you have a substance issue, they can't treat you there for both. Same thing if you're in a substance use treatment facility and they treat you and all of a sudden the mental health issues, there's a realization they have to be addressed. In a lot of cases, they can't treat you. So we have a bill that would allow facilities to treat people with co-occurring conditions. They have to be licensed, obviously, but they can go there and know they're going to get the full, their needs fully met at that one facility. And so we're looking at that. We continue to look at continuity of care for behavioral health. Last session or 2 sessions ago, we had a bill, if you had MS and finally got the right medication, you might lose your job, you might have a change of insurer, whatever it might be. Because of that change in insurance, sometimes you were forced to start the process of finding the right medication over. In MS, that's just, we should never have let that happen. So we filed a bill and it passed to make sure that there's it was included another bill that makes sure there's continuity of care. That if your insurance changes, that you can continue on with the care. We find in mental health, it's the same thing. You find a provider, a counselor, a therapist that you connect with, that you find to be helpful, and then you lose your job or your employer changes insurance, and all of a sudden you don't have access to that mental health provider. So we have a bill that would allow for the continuity of treatment despite any change in insurance.
You and I had spoke about this prior to, I suppose, the cameras rolling. But you know that expression is kind of interesting because nothing rolls inside the cameras.
Yeah,
anymore,
I know.
right?
There's no film.
Youth vaping.
It continues to be
The numbers
a
are
problem.
down, though.
The numbers are down in Massachusetts and nationally. It's still a concern. Certainly young people are being targeted through social media. The industry is constantly evolving. It was a tobacco industry promoting tobacco products and flavored tobacco products, and they realized they had
Which you pushed hard against.
Yes, they realized that they had to do that because young people weren't smoking, so they introduced flavors. And we were able to pass the first in the country flavored tobacco ban here in Massachusetts.
First in the country.
First in the country. There are several states, 6 or 7 states now, that have legislation filed that are looking to do the same thing. But we were the first to do it. And that covers flavored tobacco products, including flavored nicotine products. But it went from, hey, we're losing people who using tobacco, the younger generations aren't, so they introduced flavors. And the flavors attracted young people to vaping products and cigarette products, combustible cigarettes, in enormous numbers. In Massachusetts, we said no more flavored tobacco products. Now they're introducing these nicotine pouches. In Massachusetts, if they're flavored, they would not be permitted to be sold, given the language that we used. But across the country, that's the newest thing. They're introducing flavored nicotine pouches that kids can put in, and teachers in class don't know that they're using them, and they are highly addictive. Nicotine levels are extremely high. And it's just the same industry finding new products to attract young people, to addict those young people so that they will have lifetime customers. That's what the cigarette industry, tobacco industry did. It's what the vaping industry did. It's now what they're doing with nicotine. And it's all the same money, all the same players.
So what would you say needs to be done to combat this? Education?
Education, I believe young people speaking up, making sure that the schools they attend are aware of this and that they're offering information and awareness on these issues. We've been successful in having this be a component to a health curriculum. We think that's very important. More than anything else, it's getting young people to recognize that you're being targeted and that these are highly addictive products. They're cool these days, but they're highly, highly addictive.
Quincy is fortunate to have a tobacco specialist, treatment specialist in the city, but not all municipalities have that. I'm sure throughout your district, Quincy might be an exception.
Yeah, some of them share tobacco control specialists, and they all do really, really good work. And our challenge every year is to make sure that they're adequately funded. And so usually I file an amendment to the budget to make sure that they have funding that they need in order to get out into the community so that they can go to the stores, see who's selling these products under the table, so to speak, or under the counter, to do awareness within the community and awareness within the schools.
I'm going to cite an article just not too long ago. And as we kind of continue on looking at legislation, I want to kind of take a break from that and talk about your stance and your push for transparency, because this can kind of come into everything. Certainly transparency can come into any of the topics that we just discussed.
Right. So we have Senate rules that govern how we process things in the Senate, and then there's joint rules between the House and Senate that govern how we will interact with each other on bills. And we have not had agreed upon joint rules in the legislature, I think, for at least 2 sessions at this point. So we operate off of the older rules. And notwithstanding that, there has been some tension between the House and Senate. And as a result, many bills are left on the table. As I said, we went on July 31st, which is the end of our formal sessions. And formal sessions are where comprehensive bills that may require roll calls or that people may want to amend are taken up. And then in informal sessions, there's smaller bills, local bills that are moved, and unless there's an objection, they move through pretty quickly. So the end of our formal sessions by rules has always been July 31st. For the second session in a row, we got to July 31st and then went 24 straight hours. And there were several conference committees. Conference committees are when the House passes a bill, the Senate passes a bill, there's differences, they have a conference committee to iron them out, and then they come to the floor with a bill, and you vote yes or no, no chance to amend it at that point. So there were several conference committees that had been meeting. They were unable to come to agreement on an economic development bill, on a climate bill, on the substance use bill. I'm trying to think, there was about 7 or 8 of them, substantial bills that weren't finished on July 31st. And so then you have these complicated, comprehensive bills that are being put before the membership during informal sessions when you don't take a roll call vote. We did on the climate bill, we did on the economic development bill because it's required, because it's a bonding bill. But the rules had to be really twisted to allow that during an informal session. So in an informal session, you get this comprehensive bill with little time to read it, and there's no roll call vote on it. Basically, it's all those...
Which can have a significant impact,
Correct.
by the way.
Yeah, it's all those in favor say aye, opposed no, the ayes have it. There's no roll call. So our constituents don't know how we vote on these bills. And that gets to the transparency issue. And then because they're coming out, particularly bills that are not conference bills, but comprehensive bills that come out of committee, that we may want to file amendments to, you have limited opportunity to file amendments, limited opportunity to get up and debate it. And then on top of that, there's no roll call. And that was pretty common over the last 5 months, from July through the end of December. And so we're going to propose rule changes that make it more participatory, more transparent, that try to address some of these issues that came up. Just a quick example, we had a bill that changed an entire section of the general laws having to do with child custody. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee. We were polled, meaning, hey, do you want this to go to the floor? An hour to poll it out. And then within half hour after that, it was on the Senate floor to change an entire section of the general laws. And so Senator Tarr, who's the minority leader, Republican minority leader, and myself, we put the brakes on it and said, let's just take at least a day so we can look at this. We both had no problems with the substance of the bill because we were adopting kind of a national standard. But the way it came out, it was just boom. And then fast forward to the end of December, we had the bill that would address kind of the Steward health situation, and then a pharmaceutical bill come out in the last couple of days. Tremendous work done by those on the conference committee putting it together. But it came out and combined, the 80, 90 pages, plus another bill that's 30, 40 pages. They come out, you try to get it and read it, and then it's just voted on. And we had situations where the public got word that these were out and said, oh, I hope you consider this, I hope you consider that. And my response had to be, it already passed.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it should work.
You mentioned hospitals, and there's been a lot that the state has been, I suppose, had to deal with the withdrawal of Steward. Talk about that, and I guess the city of Quincy used to have a hospital in the city limits, but there are no longer a hospital here in Quincy, and a lot of the hospitals that were Steward owned around have gone.
Right. So Quincy was a Steward hospital. At one point, after its various versions, it ended up being a Steward hospital, and they put some money into it, dressed it up a little bit, but ultimately they couldn't make it work. In some areas, and Quincy's one of them, where you have a disproportionate share of individuals who don't have private insurance and instead have public insurance, those disproportionate share hospitals aren't reimbursed at the same level, and so there's a struggle for them to survive financially. And so in places like Lawrence and Lowell and Quincy and Brockton and others, particularly where Steward hospitals were, they weren't able to survive financially. Unknown in some way, what Steward had done was they bought these hospitals, knowing that they were disproportionate share hospitals, thought because they were a private operator they could be more efficient, and ended up selling the land underneath the buildings through some sort of financial process, and then the hospitals had to pay rent to this hedge fund or whatever fund it was, and they controlled, basically, they charged the hospitals whatever they wanted. So the money was made in selling the land, and then the rent payments being made by the hospital, and so it was just a snowball effect, it was downward spiral, and it was just absolutely outrageous. and Ralph Delatorre, who is involved there, he's been called before Congress. There's some speculation that he's going to face some real serious issues over all of this.
But the need was there. The city of Quincy, and not only the city of Quincy, the numbers are growing. We're
Yes.
well over 100,000.
Yes, it's and so in the context of what we've learned from Stewart and some of the nonprofits as well, is that it's very difficult to build a new hospital and start from scratch. And so the state went in and worked with other providers to take over some of the Stewart hospitals to help financially, and that kept people working, kept the hospitals open, and they tried to do it in a way that provided as much coverage across the Commonwealth as possible. But the cost of healthcare is just really, really high. It's a real struggle to make it work. We see it in our health insurance premiums, and we do get good care, but it's a system that's under a lot of stress right now. And so the idea of having somebody come in, buy land, build a building, and open a new hospital is unlikely. Urgent care centers, some other things, those are filling the voids
Right.
and offering more services than they have in the past.
Yeah. But are they the answer?
I think there's a place for them. I don't think they're the answer overall. But I think as people get more aware of the services they provide. And then in Quincy, we are incredibly lucky. We have, I think, one of the best healthcare providers to be found in Manatee Community Health Center. They offer a full range of programs. You go in there and you can get, mental health care, any sort of behavioral health care, physical health care, specialist. They do a phenomenal job, and they do it very cost effectively. And so I believe that community health centers really should be the future. They've grown with time, they've become more comprehensive, but I think that's where so many more services can be provided. And Manat's a role model for it.
And we also have Aspire Health,
Yes.
which used to be South Shore Mental Health.
Right.
Right within, not only, serving Quincy, but the surrounding area as well.
Yeah, so we're lucky. They've actually going into new space over at the end of Furnace Brook Parkway. So you have Manat.
Which incidentally used to be a Stewart.
Yes, exactly, if
property.
you remember the sign on it. So we have South Cove Community Health Center, which serves primarily the Asian community. They do phenomenal work over there. So we're pretty lucky, and the hope is that, Manat, South Cove, Aspire on behavioral health, and then all the other Bay State, QCAP, all those organizations, we have, Father Bill's now. People who are there can get medical attention right on premises, which is life-changing. All those combined hopefully reduce or decrease the demand for inpatient services at hospitals. The idea is you get to people early and help prevent the things that may ultimately otherwise prompt them to go or require them to go to a hospital.
In the last couple of minutes, let's tackle the sports betting.
Yeah, so we talked about vaping and young people being targeted. Sports betting.
This targeting of young people with this.
Absolutely. They've done it through social media the same way that they did it with vaping. They're targeting certain groups. They're targeting basically young men, high school. Even though it's illegal to sports bet in high school, they find ways around it.
That doesn't stop a kid.
Right, and they also now, the industry has these non-money games that are just like the money games, and the idea is young people will use them, and then when they turn 21, then all of a sudden they can just go step smoothly into betting money. So they're targeting people. It's the same thing all over again. They're doing it with advertising and outreach, and we're not equipped quite yet to handle the addictive nature of sports betting, and it is addictive. There are some organizations, Riverside is an organization in Massachusetts that's now starting a recovery group for people who are struggling with addiction prompted by sports betting. I went down to Philadelphia a couple of months ago to meet with a group of people in recovery. And one of the incredible things that we heard, and this is included in the bill that we call it the Better Health, BETTOR Health Act. There are these hosts that get paid based on how much they convince somebody to bet. And so talking with somebody in recovery, they had been in recovery for a while, and the host kept reaching out. Hey, haven't heard from you for a while. Hey, have you heard what's going on with the Celtics tonight? Relentless. And this person in particular relapsed. And he ended up, through a host, on the front row of Philadelphia 76ers game, and going out in the court and meeting Joel Embiid. He had his wife with him. His wife thought he was still doing well in recovery. And ultimately she asked him, yeah, hi, I never asked you, how do we get the front row seats and get to go on court to meet this? And he, well, through the gambling company. And it was a real impact on their relationship. And thankfully he got back on the path of recovery. But they are constantly, if you reaching out to you, if you're a regular bettor and they haven't heard from you in 3 days, they'll call you, they'll contact you. And so they're doing it through deceptive advertising, they're doing it through these hosts, they are doing it through prop bets in games, and we're seeing now the impact of that. Another NBA player is under investigation. Then we just had, it was reported in the Globe that an umpire, Major League Baseball umpire, was terminated because of betting issues. We had the Ohtani situation with betting issues. They just keep occurring. And so it's time to get this under control. Not to ban it, but to say advertising's got to be responsible. Nobody can make money on a percentage basis of what they convince somebody to bet. There's going to be more money put into treatment. Massachusetts has a tax rate on the companies, not on bettors, but on the companies, that's 21%. That's lower than the states around us.
You're looking at 51.
We're looking at 51, which would be comparable to 3 states around us.
Okay.
And it would triple the amount of revenue that comes into the Commonwealth through sports betting, and we can turn that towards helping people who are struggling with it. So a whole host of things in the bill. It's pretty comprehensive. We're going to work real hard on it.
2 minutes. Let's end with the professional development courses, or a course at the State House.
Yes. So we don't offer a lot of professional development for staff. And when I was in graduate school, I took a great course. It was called The Making of a Politician, and it was a communications course. And it was pretty broad and comprehensive, but there were elements of it that I thought would be really helpful to people at the State House. And so I spent some time over the summer putting together a curriculum. Peter Jasinski, who's the communications director in my office, he's had some experience teaching. And so together we offered this course to Senate staffers, and came in and did things like this. We had a mock interview. We had them give a mock, give them a speech, and we filmed it. We had them do meet with an advocate, and we filmed it. So we did all these things, and then we would review them and talk about them, and it was well received. And we hopefully will be doing it again. And to watch the progress from somebody at the start of the course on film to where they were at the end of the course on film was pretty remarkable. And so we had a lot of fun with it, and we hope to be able to do it again. And now the Senate's starting to do a little bit more in terms of professional development and course offerings.
We are at the end of our half an hour, but certainly welcome you back to talk more. There's never a shortage of topics. Again, thank you for coming into the studio and sharing your knowledge.
Great, thank you. Always a pleasure.
And giving us the update. And thank you at home for watching. And just please remember to support the local access station in the community in which you reside. Take care.